Hey everyone! So today I'm going to be showing you how to render out your final animations in Arnold so they look nice and pretty and beautiful. So here I am in Maya. I have a simple scene, and if I hit play, I have this animation of a ball going in a terribly done circle. As far as lighting goes, I have one of the photometric lights that we talked about and an HDR map with a sky dome. Now, I'm using Arnold Shaders. I think I started out with the AI standard surface for both of them, and then I just gave them presets like Jade, and I think the other one is Wax, but I'm not sure. But anyways, so once you have your scene how you want it, the first thing that I would do is if you go up to the View panel up here, you can actually go down to Camera Settings and select Resolution Gate. And by doing that, we see this little gray box that shows us exactly what the image is going to render out. So if I were to do just a quick render in Arnold here, we have a render based exactly on the dimensions of what the camera is seeing in Maya. That way there's no confusion of what it's going to see and what it's not going to see. So with the resolution gate showing in the camera settings, I'm just going to position the camera how I would essentially want it to be. Maybe just play this animation around just to see where the ball is going to be. That's fine. I mean, it's not perfect, but sure, let's do that. So once we have it where we want it, what we can do in order to make it so that we don't accidentally mess up our camera by moving, we can come up to the top where this little camera button is with a lock. And if we press it, suddenly we are locked. I can't move my camera in any way. So once we know that, we can hit the button next to it just to see what our camera is. This essentially selects whatever camera we have, whatever camera we're looking through at the time. And we can see that we are locked in these dimensions, and our name of the camera is just the perspective camera. So that's good to know. Now, how do we render this out? First, we need to go to the render settings. And if we go up here to the top where we have this little action take button with a gear, if we click it, we have some settings come up. So if it doesn't say that we're rendering using Arnold, switch to it now. It might say like software or hardware or something, just switch to Arnold. And then we have all of these settings down here. Some of these are not so important for us. The first thing is we want to be working with an EXR image. We can technically do a PNG or a TIFF or a JPEG, but an EXR generally has the best quality in images, so we're going to do that. Next, I see that we have a single frame selected under frame animation extension, and I don't want that. I want to do an actual animation the entire timeline. So I'm going to switch to name number dot extension, and that opens up some new settings here. The frame padding is not super important. It's just it used to be important a couple years ago, but now it's mostly an obsolete feature. But basically it means how high are you going to go in your frame count. So since I'm going to go into the hundreds, 150 about, I'm going to put it at 3. And you can see as I'm changing it, this set of numbers is changing too. So I can make it as many zeros as I want or no zeros at all. But I'm going to leave it at 3. The other important thing to note at the top is the path. These are where your images are going to be rendered to. The only way to change this path is to set your project. So if you have your project set in a certain location, it's going to go to the images of that set project. So for me, I have another project set working on a room, and it's going to go into that folder, which for the demonstration, that's fine for me. So if we keep scrolling down, we get to the frame range. And we don't want decimal frames. For me, it got changed because I switched from 24 frames per second to 29.97 frames. And it tried its best to match the overall settings. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make these an even number. And it looks like it goes to 150 for the other one, so I'm going to do 150 for the end. And of course, we want to go by each frame. Moving down further, where the renderable camera is the perspective camera. We found that out by pressing the camera button. And moving down further, we have a bunch of presets for the image size. Most of the ones that we're going to be dealing with are either HD 540, HD 720, or HD 180. That's your typical widescreen images. Most of the time, you guys do not need to do 1080. That's gonna take a lot of time. So I'm gonna do 720. That's a decent size for what we're trying to do. So with that done, I'm gonna switch over to the Arnold tab. And we have a bunch of settings that we don't really need to get into right now. But by default, these should be mostly fine. If you have a scene where you have a lot of specular things or transmissive glass, then you might want to bump some of these up, maybe your overall samples up a little bit. But keep in mind that we have an overall number right here, 117. And your overall samples here will bump that up, not just these. So it's a combination of them. Essentially, bumping up the camera samples bumps up all of these at the same time. So it may be better for you and more efficient for you to just figure out what you need based on what sort of materials you have in the scene, how noisy the images might be, and just bumping these up one by one. But by default, these numbers are fine and you shouldn't need to use them. So with the settings figured out, I'm just going to go up to the rendering tab up here. And up at the top under render, we can go to render sequence. And if we hit the little box, we can make sure that we're selecting the right camera, which we are. It's perspective camera. Make sure that we have the right frame range, which I believe it just takes the frame range from the timeline, or it might actually take the frame range from the settings. I think it takes the frame range from the settings, and we don't really need to select any of the other ones, so we can just hit render sequence, and then it's going to start rendering images out one at a time. Now, while it's rendering, it's important to note that you cannot use Maya for anything else. Like, you can switch over to other programs if you want, but Maya is pretty much locked in rendering this. As you can see, it doesn't even want to switch back to Maya because it's already completely in use. But it's saving out each image one at a time where I put it, which would be in the documents, room 1 final, images, and as you can see, we're getting a few right here. Now I'm going to let it go and render a few more frames, and then I'll show you how to put it into Premiere Pro. So I'm just going to cut it off here. It looks like it's at 13 right now. So normally if it finishes, everything will be fine. It'll say that it's done. You can use Maya again. Here, since I'm cutting it early, I'm just going to literally force Maya to close. I don't recommend doing that, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to open up Premiere, and when we have Premiere open, just under a new project, you can right-click and import, and if we find the path that these images were saved to, in my case it was in my documents, and saved to another project that I had set for Maya in the images folder, we have a couple images. And so if I were to click on one of them and then hit the options button, I can click image sequence, which is very important. That's all I need to do though. And then I can hit import, and it will grab all of the images and put them together in a video. So now if I throw them in and show the timeline, we have a very quick video. Of course, the last frame is corrupted because I didn't let it finish render, but all of the other ones are perfect. And then, if you want this video exported out, you can just go to File, Export Media, and H.264 is a good format to have. We can call it what we want, ball render test for me. Note where I'm saving it, it's in the downloads folder for me. But you can change it where you put your name. You can put in whatever folder you want. These settings are fine, and just make sure maximum render quality is set, and then you can export it out. And then if I were to go to this video, we now have this beautiful video that ends pretty early on. But that's all you need to do to render out your images beautifully.